Morning, another day, another real world test. Today we're doing on the Nothing Headphone 1, the first ever over-the-ear headphones from Nothing. And eagle-eyed viewers might notice I'm not in New York City, I'm in a hotel. And I'm actually in Geneva, Switzerland, which I'll explain why in a second. But, as per the usual, we will explore while we're here and test out these headphones. But, first things first. Coffee. Check. And here's the reason I'm here. This is the World of Coffee event, which is in Geneva for the first time, and is Europe's largest coffee trade show. There are a few other of these per year. I just went to the US one, which was in Houston this year, and I went to it in Chicago the year before. There was also another in Asia this year in Jakarta, and this is my first time going to one outside of the US. This event is run by the Specialty Coffee Association, or the SCA, which is a non-profit organization that has sort of become the body of standards for the coffee industry, whether that's equitable practices on the farm to a widely used cupping protocol that many roasters use to score coffee and decide whether to buy a coffee or not. And they fund a ton of scientific studies on coffee as well. Now, the show is a place for everyone that's involved in the coffee supply chain, from producers, farmers, to roasters, to cafe owners and baristas. There's even competitions for the world championships. Various coffee machine manufacturers, roasting machines, cups, measurement tools, etc. And one big reason I come, besides trying all of the coffee and meeting new people in the coffee industry, who by the way have all been super friendly and welcoming, is the fact that they have workshops and lectures that you can attend. I took a few while here, from one on how color scientifically affects how people perceive flavors in the coffee, and even knowing this, most of us in the room still mention different flavors for the same coffee when the room was purple versus yellow. And I was even expecting that, and it still happened. It's nuts. And then I took another one on scientific studies that were conducted to try and detect when a coffee has been infused with some type of flavoring at the farm or processing location, as it's becoming more and more of a thing for people adding natural and artificial things to their cheaper coffee beans to try and intensify the flavors and increase the amount of money they can get for them. Which to some degree is fine if it were transparent, but a lot of producers are just doing this and lying to buyers. And what as an industry we can do about it? Is there a way to detect it chemically? Just super interesting stuff and more stuff for me to worry about when buying beans. Now, wandering the floor, you see all sorts of toys. And actually I've noticed a pattern of seeing a lot of see-through espresso machines, which I'm kind of a sucker for because you can see how they work. But that, of course, reminds me of the new Nothing Headphone 1, which definitely stands out from the crowd with that signature Nothing transparent design. They come in black and white, and they have these transparent outer shells showing off the internal components, though they're more for looks than actual internals, but that's fine. Complete with Sound by Kef, the company they tapped for the audio tuning of the headphones, and Nothing Headphone 1, written in Nothing's pixelated font. It's a cool look that fits with the rest of the Nothing tech lineup. All of the build materials seem relatively high quality and solid, and it has an IP52 rating, which means decent dust resistance, but water is only rated for vertically dropping. So they're technically okay in the rain, but only to a 15-degree angle, which you can get rain that goes at a more horizontal angle than that, so I just be careful. One cool thing that's a little different about these headphones is the control setup. Instead of touch sensors and a few buttons, Nothing went with much more tactile controls. There's the so-called roller at the top of the right ear cup, which is basically a scroll wheel that spins to control volume with a satisfying audio click. And it can be pressed to pause and play, or held to cycle through noise modes. Now underneath that is the paddle, which you push right to skip forward and left to go back. And supposedly you can hold it forward or back to fast forward or reverse, but only in certain programs. I use Spotify mostly, which at least at the time of testing these, doesn't seem to work for it yet. Not sure if that'll come later. And there's also a button that triggers your voice assistant. What's great about all this is that each control feels completely different, so it's very easy to know that you've found the right one, and what to do is very inherent in the way that they're designed. For example, the roller makes sense for volume, the paddle makes sense for tracks, etc. Besides how the Nothing Headphone 1 look, they also feel pretty comfortable. Although, I would say they're probably not as comfortable as the Sony WH-1000X Mark 6s that I just did a real-world test on. They're also a fair bit heavier, and over time, you can feel that weight on the top of your head a bit. Now, the clamp force, or how they squeeze inward on your head, is also a bit strong to me, which is odd, but also I'm sure it's to help with noise isolation by ensuring that the ear cups are sealing out outside noise. And actually, they do a good job of that. That said, again, they're not uncomfortable, and I was able to wear them on multiple flights without too much discomfort. They also come with a nice slim carrying case that definitely takes some design cues from the Nothing ear cases with the dimple on them, and you'll get an aux cable and a USB-C cable, which can be used for both charging and audio playback. back. Now the headphones don't fold, but the fact that the case is slim does help a little. I actually managed to put them into a soft pouch, even though they don't fold, which makes them just a little easier to get into a backpack than the rigid case. But of course, I still want them to fold down, like Sony finally reverted back to this year, so they can take up less space in my bag for when, I'm traveling. All right, before we head out of here for the day, here's what they sound like to the best of my ability that I can show you using my microphone, and how that compares to the Apple AirPods Max and the Sony WH-1000X Mark 6s.
Got a lot of words you don't know how to say. Pull out all your big ones, tryna flip my face. Got a lot of words you don't know how to say. Pull out all your big ones, tryna flip my face. Got a lot of words you don't know how to say. Pull out all your big ones, tryna flip my face.
Switzerland, not prepared for hot weather. The AC is trying real hard in here. Not working.
This is an area of Geneva called Old Town, and it's actually Switzerland's largest historical city. Basically, Geneva's Old Town is the original city of Geneva that is very much now surrounded by the much more modern city. But there's a lot about the Old Town of Geneva that's unique and especially charming, like the series of underground paths and tunnels that were used to prevent attacks and evacuate citizens. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to check those out as they're closed at all times except for one weekend per year. What I was able to check out is the Place Bord de Four. Tell me how much I butchered that, French speakers. But it is the perfect spot to sit and have an Aperol Spritz. Now, it's an architectural center showcasing Geneva's signature narrow houses. At one point in the 15th century, these houses were actually remodeled to extend them further upward, and eventually became home to Protestant refugees who came to Geneva during a time of Catholic oppression. And I have to say, it's a fun little area with a bunch of bars and restaurants that are open late and all have outdoor seating. It's gotta be one of the few old parts of a town that I've been to in Europe where it also happens to be the place where young people go out late. Now, the Old Town is also home to the St. Peter's Cathedral, which is massive. It was first built in the 12th century and has undergone a number of changes since then, including becoming a major symbol of the Protestant Reformation. It also happens to offer one of the best views of Old Town, which you can check out after climbing its 157 steps. This is a similar view, but unfortunately, the cathedral is under construction right now, so we can't check out that exact view at this moment. But if you're anywhere in Geneva, it's worth checking out the Old Town, even if you're not that into history. It's just a beautiful spot to walk around and even stay well into the night should the mood strike. Okay, let's talk about the Nothing X app, as if we're honest, it's one of the better headphone apps out there. Firstly, there are actually two EQs that you can use. There's a simple one with presets and basic bass, mid, treble controls, but also, if you want to get nerdy about it, there's an advanced EQ that has 8 bands, but you can set not just the frequency of each band, but also the Q, which is basically how wide each band is. It can get a little confusing for those who aren't audio nerds, but at least there's a visual representation of the EQ that updates as you make changes. Now, the rest of the app is pretty simple though. It's easy to change most of the settings straight from the home screen, including noise settings, spatial audio, and more. There aren't as many settings and features as some of the other headphones, but I'm not a big audiophile and I don't touch most headphones apps more than once in a long while, so it works well for me. Now, the sound quality is good for a pair of headphones, especially in this price range, and you can eke out more by messing with that EQ, of course. And the noise cancellation is pretty good too, but again, not probably the best. It's still not bad, it's just not as good as options like the Sony XM6s or the AirPods Pro Maxes. But those are much more expensive. And it's more the same with transparency mode. It's good and it works well enough, but it's not as natural as, again, the AirPod Maxes or the XM6s.
Okay, and we gotta hurry. We're gonna miss the next spot.
Geneva has expanded beyond the Old Town, and most of it is actually super modern. And there is a spectacular lake in the middle of the city.
Have you ever seen a city lake this clear? What?
And the best way to check it out and also escape this heat wave that we're in right now is to get on that lake by boat. And this is the boat that we'll be riding this evening. It's called the Italie, which is French for Italy. It was first commissioned in 1908, so it's over 100 years old, and for almost 50 years it has done the same journey covering the length of Lake Geneva. The boat was actually renovated in 2016, but it still has a lovely classic look to it that was preserved through renovation. The interior is historic, yet modern, and just fun to explore even. And you can also opt in for a chef's menu that today included 3 3 dishes that were delicious, and a rather large Aperol spritz. Not a complaint, just an observation. Perhaps one of the most random, yet most interesting landmarks here is in the lake, and it is the Jet d'Eau, which translates to the water jet. So what makes it so unique? Well, it's basically a fountain that blasts water into the air at a massive 200 kilometers per hour, which equates to about 124 miles per hour. The end result? The water reaches 140 meters, which is pretty nuts, and you can even see it in the distance from a lot of parts of Geneva, just peeking above the buildings. Originally in 1886, the hydraulic factory that distributed the power to Geneva's craftspeople and watchmakers was forced to create an open-air outlet for the overpressurized water when the workshops would close in the evening. Eventually, though, it just became a loved attraction by locals and visitors. Also, at night and during special occasions, it's lit up, which makes for a cool effect. Okay, back to the much more modern looking Nothing Headphone 1. The battery life on these headphones is pretty solid, though it varies depending on how you use them, obviously. But Nothing claims 35 hours or so with ANC on, and a staggering 80 hours with it off, apparently. And I can say those numbers are at least close to accurate in my limited testing. They charge pretty quickly too. A 5-minute charge gets you about 2.4 hours of playback with noise cancellation on, or 5 with it off. The headphones support connection through Bluetooth 5.3 and work with AAC and LDAC codecs. They can also be used wired through either the included 3.5mm or USB-C cables for lossless audio, which makes them pretty versatile. They also support Bluetooth multipoint, so you can connect them to 2 devices, like a phone and a laptop at the same time, and they'll automatically switch between those devices as you push play on either one. It's a feature that I actually must have nowadays in any of the headphones that I use. So, what's the verdict? Well, the Nothing Headphone 1 actually have a lot going on for them. The noise cancellation and sound isn't as impressive as, say, the XM6s, but Sony's headphones are a lot more expensive. At the $300 or so price range, which is how much the Nothing Headphone 1 will cost, I can't think of a better option. And on top of that, they look super unique, but they're not gaudy to me, a minimalist. They also sound pretty good, and they work well with a great app.
And there you go. Let me know what you guys think of the Nothing Headphone 1 headphones, as well as what you thought about this video. Always appreciate hearing from you guys. And now I'm gonna head back to my hotel and call it a night early because I have to go somewhere else tomorrow. London. Nothing. I'm next to a highway. It's about dot next to a highway. Put all your transportation in one place. I get it. It's efficient. This guy is screaming. I don't know why. And there you go.